Welcome to another little session of working on our run mechanics. So what we're going to look at here is a time-lapse photo of Lauren Fleshman, L-Train, working with a biomechanicist out of UCLA. I believe this is back in 2009. What I want to emphasize here is that this biomechanicist asked Lauren Fleshman to focus on several primary movements. The first one he asked her to focus on was to leverage off and push off of this rear foot. After that, he asked her to focus on driving her rear knee forward. As we see again in frame 9 and 10 here, driving this knee up. And then he asked her to claw her foot back, so once the foot's here, to claw it back down to the ground. These are the primary movements he asked her to focus on. He had observed Terenice Dibaba running, and he was trying to get her to emulate Dibaba. Alberto Salazar has done something similar, and when he asked Ritzenhein to emulate and imitate Bekele. That's not exactly the best way to accomplish really good running mechanics. I'll give an example. For example, they show her wave of movement here. This is pretty similar to, say, to a sine wave. If I ask you to take your finger and move it in an up and down fashion like this, and then walk forward, you're going to see a sine wave become visible due to frequency. But if I were to only show you the sine wave and told you to recreate that, you'd most likely take your finger and actively draw it. So what this biomechanicist here at UCLA working with L-Train, and also with what Alberto Salazar has attempted to do with Ritzenhein, they were asking them to basically redraw the sine wave. There's some major flaws with that. It's equivalent to if I were to take a dot and put it at the top of a circle and move in a circle. If you were to follow that dot as it rolls forward, with time that dot's going to appear just to be primarily moving up and down. But if I tell you to redraw the sine wave with that circle and the dot, you're actually going to get this transforming mass that goes from oval to tight circle to oval, and that's not what's going on here. And I'll stop explaining this concept now and say that what we need to focus on is this up and down movement, not these horizontal movements that this biomechanicist is having Lauren Fleshman work on here. Because what we see is this leveraging motion with this foot here that does create a lot of torque in that foot, which can lead to quadricep being overstressed. And then when that becomes overstressed, IT band pain, we are pushing off the foot, going to cause a lot of force and torque in the ball of the foot, and you can get stress fractures in the ball of the foot. We're overstressing the soleus here, which can lead to inflammation of the Achilles tendon, and then also overstress the plantar fascia. But more so that I'm seeing with Lauren Fleshman is this. Since he's telling her to claw her foot back, we're seeing this foot reach out in front of the knee quite a bit, toes lifted up just a little bit. We see the inside of the foot as she's supinating, and when she lands, she's landing on the outside of the foot. We can see that better in frame 13 here. She's landing on the outside of the foot, and on top of that, when we look in frame 6, her foot is ahead of the knee. So we have a braking force here, and that braking force, all of that force is being put through the outside of the foot, completely bypassing the plantar fascia flexing and that pronation absorbing shock. So this braking force is causing quite a bit of stress to the foot and to the knee and to the lower leg, which can lead to injury. Now we're going to take a look at Haile Gebrselassie racing Craig Montram here. We're going to focus on Haile Gebrselassie here in the middle. And what we're going to see some aspects of really great form, and we'll also see some things that are definitely issues that have led to his Achilles injuries in his career. Obviously, possible correlations. So what we'll focus on here is when his foot is underneath his hips. It's like a two-cylinder engine. One cylinder fires, meaning one foot is lifted off the ground, and then the other one fires. When this foot's underneath the hips, it's done. It has accomplished its goal. What was its goal? To catch this foot back up underneath the center of mass, and then now it's going to go back down to the ground. He's not going to consciously focus on getting that foot to the ground. What we saw with the Lauren Fleshman frame series before is she was focusing on getting this foot down to the ground. And when you're focusing on the front foot, you cannot focus on the rear foot, and this rear foot gets left behind. What we're going to see with Haile Gebrselassie is he does a very good job of getting this foot off the ground. Foot's on the ground, mid-stance position. It takes 1, 2. In 2 frames, this rear foot is way off the ground. Knee is already bent. This foot, if we go back, foot's underneath the hips, we'll watch it go straight down. This leg goes straight down. He doesn't do any controlling motions with the foot out in front. We look at Mottram up ahead. He is doing the same thing we saw Lauren Fleshman doing. Lower leg is way in front of the knee. Foot is supinated to the side. Toes are up. Haile Gebrselassie came down directly underneath the center of mass. What we're also going to see is if we go back to this mid-stance position, it takes him 1, 2, 3 frames to have a significant bend with the rear leg. These are things we're going to focus on. He's focusing on this rear leg. Now, with Lauren Fleshman, that biomechanicist from UCLA was telling her to shove her knee forward. We're going to watch Haile Gebrselassie, and rather than him leaving this angle behind the knee static and swinging this knee forward as we saw with Lauren Fleshman, he's going to continue bringing his rear foot up. Why? Because he's doing more of a vertical motion. He's using the knee bend to bring the foot underneath the hips rather than using the hip flexor to swing the knee forward. That's an important distinction, so I'll say it again. He's using the knee bend to bring the foot up underneath the hips rather than using the hip flexor while leaving this angle static behind the knee to drive the knee forward. If we do that, we will overload our hip flexor, take longer to catch the foot up underneath us, rear foot will be left further behind, and front foot will land out in front. Once you start using the hip flexor to swing this knee forward, you have no choice at all but to land out in front of your center of mass. So watch Haile Gebrselassie. He comes down, boom, his foot's all the way on the ground now. And again, we see Craig Mottram, foot way up in the air. He's in his mid-stance position, foot high. They're doing an incredibly fast pace here, 52 second per 400 meter pace at the end of a 5K, so his foot coming this high is a function of his speed. So 1, 2, foot's off the ground, 3, knees bending, and now this foot, boom, comes down. Foot lands underneath the knee, we're underneath. So the main things we're focusing on here is he is getting this knee bent behind himself, and that drives this foot down. So this foot's underneath the hips. Now, next frame, we see this knee bend. We'll see in some of these other videos you look at today is that once the foot's underneath the hips, it takes a couple more frames to get this knee to bend. His timing is great here. Bend the rear knee, drive this foot down, lands underneath. His only focus here is getting this foot off the ground and letting this leg relax and just drop down to the ground because it's done. This leg, now this front leg's done, it's underneath the hips, it's this leg's turn. See the knee bend? Bend. It bends more, driving this foot down and down. Here we have a runner on a treadmill. We can only see their lower legs, but we can still get enough information off of this to make some suggestions. So let's go back. Here's their mid-stance position. I would like to see this heel coming down a little bit more just to relax the foot so the soleus isn't taking too much load, which can strain the Achilles over time. Okay, so let's count how many frames so the foot comes off the ground. 2, 3, 4. 4 frames. So we're a little bit far behind here. If we look here, we have a huge leveraging motion off this foot. We want to get rid of that leveraging motion. We don't want to feel ourselves, this foot bending, or the shoe bending so much like this and leveraging off. That's going to lift the body up, creating quite a bit of load on the ball of the foot, causing some foot pain. Also, we're using the calves too much, and we're flexing the calves and the quadricep here when we should try to relax those as much as possible. We land in the mid-stance position. We want to keep our quadriceps and our calves as relaxed as possible and go to using our hamstring behind the knee to bring this foot up. One reason why we're seeing this late delay is the front foot has a little bit of focus. We can start seeing the toes curving up, see the bottom of the shoe, and right there you see a supination. There's a lot of focus on this front foot landing. Now we see toes up, and we're coming down nice and flat, but there's quite a bit of control here beforehand. If we could focus on this rear foot coming off the ground sooner, driving this foot soon underneath, that'd be better. This control of the front foot is going to cause some strain through the ankle, and it's just slowing us down overall. If we can get from one foot to the other foot faster, we will move faster, more efficiently, and use less glycogen, because this focus on the front foot is actually using more glycogen. If we're taking roughly 1,000 steps per mile, that adds up. We're flat underneath here. It takes 1. We'll count from here actually. 1, 2, 3. Foot's off the ground. Good, better timing here. So it looks like the right leg is the one with not so great timing. Toes up again, supinating just a little, coming down, nice and flat though. Right foot definitely lands better. Here we are mid stance. 1, 2, 3, 4. Consistently late with the right foot because I'm pretty sure we're thinking about this left foot. We can already see the bottom of the shoe, toes curved up a little bit, toes up a little bit, seeing the bottom of the shoe supinating some. So thinking about this left foot coming down is slowing down our right foot. Let's count this one again. 1, 2, 3. Again, good timing there. Again, we saw Geber Selassie. We need to keep bringing his foot up from here. We got to bend those knees more. There we go. We can see the control with this foot. So here we are in this position. I'd like to see this foot from here come straight down. Instead, we're lifting the toes, turning it in some. That's causing a delay of the foot landing. It's like we're delaying the landing. It's a common thing that people do. I would rather see this foot come down sooner. All right, let's take a look at this scrappy little guy. First thing we see is his knee is hyperextended here. We're going to try to land with that knee a little more bent. Taking him 1, 2, 3, 4 frames to get off the ground. That's not horrible. We could be a little better there. Bending. Now we're seeing a good bend up, but we're seeing here is that this foot should keep coming up. Why is it not? Because we're focusing on this front foot. We can see the underside of the shoe, some supination. Oh, we can see that this foot's really supinating because we're focusing on this foot. We should be focusing on bringing this foot higher, bending this knee, bringing it underneath. Rather, if you notice, we basically stop bending this knee, and at this point you're using the hip flexor to drive this knee forward. That's not, we want to use the hamstring and the glute to bring the foot up rather than using the hip flexor to drive this knee forward. 1, 2, 3, 4 to get this foot off the ground. This leg's coming down better. Oh, but right there, this reach. With that reach, we're hyperextending this foot, or this leg, and this knee is really locked in. We'd like to land with that leg a little more bent like this right leg is bending. Here we have a runner in mid stance. Let's see how long it takes to get their foot off the ground. 1, 2, 3, 4. A little bit late. Let's see how this foot lands. Oh, it starts reaching forward right there. It's reaching forward. We can see how this knee is straightening to reach forward, and because of that, we're hyperextending this leg. This is the same runner that we just saw, so he's doing the same thing there. Rather, if the foot was here, instead of kicking this lower leg out in front and straightening this knee, just letting it come straight down, we would not have this completely locked out leg here. Here we have a high school runner. We're looking at this runner right here, and let's go ahead and watch her as she runs forward. So the first thing we're seeing is this rear leg is completely hyperextended behind her. This rear leg should never be completely straight. So let's go back a little bit more. Here we are in mid stance. Takes 1, 2, 3. Good timing getting the foot off the ground, actually. That's really good. We should be focusing on bending this knee though. Because we're not focusing on bending this knee, let's see what happens with this lower leg. Reach. So now the foot, toes are coming up, dorsiflexing, swinging the lower leg out in front, really swinging the lower leg out in front, and coming down on the heel, toes off the ground, out in front of the knee by quite a bit. Let's watch again here. Mid stance. 1, 2, 3, 4 that time. Knee is bending faster. This runner will be rewarded for that. Let's take a look here. But this swinging the lower leg out in front and lifting these toes quite a bit is causing a huge heel strike. Coming down underneath. If we could focus more on this rear foot coming up and coming up underneath the hips, bringing it in a motion like this, using the hamstring and the glute, rather than using the hip flexor, driving the knee forward. We don't want to do that. We want to bring the foot off the ground, up underneath, not leaving this foot behind like this. Toes are still on the ground. It should have been off the rear foot should have been off the ground by now. And now we're going to see this. A little bit of Air Jordan going on. We don't want this leg spread. We want this foot coming up underneath, this foot being forced straight down like we saw the Geber Selassie and as we've seen the Usain Bolt and previous videos. So here we are way out in front, heel striking quite a bit. How can we fix that? Bring this foot straight up using the hamstring right here, and that will drive this foot straight down. And that's, we don't want to gain distance per stride. We want this foot to come down underneath, because once underneath, our mass can go forward and then repeat. Thank you.